What does leadership development look like when every person can see a pathway forward? In this episode of School Leadership Matters, host Darta Hovey is joined by Ashley Marsh to explore the development of a new leadership framework and the opportunities it creates for staff across our system. Together they discuss why leadership development can no longer be focused solely on principalship and how Catholic Education Sandhurst is building clearer pathways for aspiring leaders, middle leaders, and those looking to take the next step in their professional journey. Together, Darta and Ash explore why strong leadership exists at every level of a school, not just in formal leadership positions. How the new leadership framework creates greater clarity around leadership pathways and professional growth. The importance of identifying and nurturing emerging leaders across our schools. Why addressing rural and regional disadvantage means creating equitable access to leadership development opportunities. And the role of professional learning, mentoring, and system support in helping leaders grow with confidence. Whether you're an aspiring leader, a middle leader, a principal, or simply considering your next step, this episode explores the power of clear pathways, shared responsibility, and leadership growth that doesn't happen by chance. Now join us as we explore what truly matters in school leadership.
Welcome, Ash, to our next episode of School Leadership Matters. Today we're going to go a little bit deeper from the episode we had with Kendall, where we looked at our Edificare program. We're going to explore what we've been doing with our leadership framework and also looking at professional learning opportunities for staff in our schools throughout 2026 and into the future as well. So a real focus on pathways and what we're hoping to create. If you remember back to last year, we had our principals briefing in Term 4 and we presented a draft of the framework for the first time. And I'm guessing there would have been some prins there thinking, what's this about? Where does it come from? Can you reflect on some of those moments through your time within your principalship, but also within system leadership, those moments where you thought there's a real clear opportunity for us and why would we need something like a leadership framework?
Absolutely. Firstly, just great to be here, Darta, and thanks for the opportunity. The leadership framework that we are developing has really borne out of the fact that CSL is a different organisation from the organisation that I certainly grew up in and taught in and led in that we are now trying to make sure we work as a system of schools across all 51 schools in Sandhurst to shape what leadership development looks like for every person in that organisation, whether it's in the schools, whether it's our classroom teachers, whether it's our allied staff, the key staff working in school offices within our own office. And the previous leadership framework that we had was born of a different era, so to speak. It came out of the AITSL standards for principals and was written under a completely different governance structure. So it referred to canonical administrators, it talked around the role of a school board at an individual school level. So the impetus was around reflecting our current structure, and the bigger discussion was, do all roads in leadership need to lead to principalship? And pretty quickly and quite clearly, we know that we need strong leaders in our classrooms. We need those strong practitioners who are teaching our students and leading other teachers in our classrooms. We need exceptional middle leaders who are formed and developed into those middle leadership roles. And we need people who are looking at what is the next growth opportunity for them based on where they currently are, where they aspire to get to, whatever that might be, and what are the pathways going to be like that for them as they move through those steps? So that was the basis behind why we needed to develop a leadership framework or a new leadership framework within CSL.
Some good points you've raised there too, Ash, just around when you think about the levels of leadership within your schools, from aspiring right through to that executive, principal, deputy level. And if I was to think of my time within school leadership, the framework that was originally there tended to have much more of a focus at the top end that didn't have the opportunities at that mid to lower end. And I think this is the real opportunity for us to think about, well, what's this framework need and how does it work for us? Because as you said, AITSL's got a standard. We know there are plenty of those around, but we wanted to design this to make sure it works for our community and our context, and importantly, where we are now and where we want to get to.
And the other thing that is different from the AITSL standards is the fact that we are a Catholic organisation. So where does Catholic identity sit within our leadership development? And we know, given the demographics within our schools, the demographics within our leaders, and through our own experience of interview panels and appointments, that leading a Catholic school is a unique part of being a leader in Catholic education. Quite obviously, but we also know that it's an area that students are not coming out of their own lived experience within their personal lives, and not through their tertiary studies, where they're coming out with formation around the Catholic identity space. So that's an area we need to be attuned to.
Yeah, great, Ash. And I heard you touch on then too, it's not just about teaching staff. And a really important part of how we've worked on this together is it wasn't just us two. We haven't worked in a vacuum. Can you talk about the process we've gone through and the other members in CSL who we've been collaborating with in this space?
The first thing was to really almost admire the problem and the scope of the problem, to understand where we were. Was it about CSL developing its own leadership framework? What else was out there in the world? I believe we've got a couple of months left of being able to refer to the UK visit before you put a stop to me saying that.
Can I just stop and say I've actually done a count? It's 123 days that yourself, Kate, Paul Bisanella and Tim Edwards have to go. So
120 days from today, so I'm going to make the most of it. But learning internationally around what that actually looks like, that was the first thing we did. The second thing was to not only think of this as a school principal framework. So what is it that we want in a high-performing school principal? It was engaging with other members of the team here at the office. So our team in people and culture, bringing their experience from different fields around what does leadership look like outside of education context, and merging those two. And we know that as much as the education field is different, there are so many similarities to aspects of the business world that we need to merge those two together. So that was our first point here at the office, to go out to our schools and to our leaders within our schools to say, so what do you need? And so then we needed to involve our school community, so our leaders and staff from our schools, to say, what is it that you need in a leadership framework? If we were to develop a system framework, what are the areas that currently you as schools are seeking to develop in your staff, and how can we work smarter? I certainly know as a principal that when the onus is put on me to try and develop and lead my own staff, that might be great in the areas of strength for myself. But what about the areas that are not strong for me to lead and form in others? So getting that from the wide group of people that we has meant that we have a well-rounded leadership framework that will be accessible for people in our schools, and will also benefit our schools because it's going to help to develop our next leaders in all of those areas. Yeah,
that's so true. And I think one of the parts of this process around the collaboration that I found really interesting, because again, you and I are both out of school land. We're very focused on the roles that we've had both in primary and secondary leadership. But having Sam Dowling and Tanya Mullane out of our people and culture team really laid over the understanding for us that there are aspects of principalship that involve ER, that involve payroll, that involve those other areas of leadership that often can really consume a principal. So understanding from them around, well, these are the key things that they see in a framework that relates to the work they've done with schools, but also then layering in the professional learning that they think is very important for that to be a part of the ongoing journey for us within the framework, but also within the opportunities within professional learning.
And often have heard to them refer to, so how are we developing the soft skills of our leaders? So I would say that our schools and our system has been very good for a long time at developing good leaders of learning and teaching, and certainly our initiatives with Magnify have grounded that much more in evidence and enabled a systematic approach to that. But we know that our leaders, as they come through into different roles, how do I manage people is our biggest area of growth as leaders. How do we manage our school resources? So all of a sudden, I go from being a classroom teacher with a budget of a couple of $100 around my consumables to I'm leading an entire part of our school. So it might be a certain curriculum area and I've got a substantial budget and I'm leading 5 or 10 people who bring their own unique personalities, but what formation has been made available to me so that I can lead the people, that I can utilise the resources that I've been provided in the best way possible? Or am I just making it up as I go along? And we don't want that anymore.
Oh, absolutely. If you think about Edificare too, the feedback that we got on the 5 sessions, I do believe, and I know that Ben Higgins will love hearing this, that was actually the most popular session was the one done by Ben in finance. So
yeah, I'll just clarify that. It was actually Ben and myself, and it was around finance and governance that the participants said was I don't think they said the most exciting, but they said it was the most interesting because it's the area that the participants in that particular program don't have the most experience in. And it's an area as you move through the school, you sort of end up in rather than being formed in.
Okay, I'll take that as feedback, Ash. I'll go look at the data again just to see who actually got the greater votes there, but you are right. You've actually touched on governance there. Let's just move into our new cultural covenant. It's been an amazing piece of work, such a collaborative piece of work across our diocese, and it's a really important part of where the framework sits right now as we layer in. I know Kate Fogarty, our Executive Director, has also given us some help in this space to layer in the cultural covenant into the framework. Was there a point in time for you when we were working through that and looking at the covenant and how it works in the framework, you went, that makes sense to me. Here's a part of the covenant that speaks to the framework and the importance for us across Catholic Education Sandhurst of having the covenant?
I think there's a couple of key parts, and the part of the covenant that I go to the most, and I know a lot of people do, is around the know better, do better aspect. And that might be low-hanging fruit to say that has been one of the biggest areas of awakening for me. But it's that idea that we need to make sure that we don't just keep doing the things that we've done because we've always done them. Our current leadership framework has been successful in terms of our development of an assessment of principal performance and forming our leaders. But we also need to review it and say it actually hasn't been successful in forming middle leaders within our schools. It has never talked about how we form a graduate teacher through to perhaps their first POL 1 leadership role. And it certainly has never gone near any areas of our other school and office staff, such as our allied staff and our admin. Now, the first version of our leadership framework that's going to be coming out, we know is going to focus on teaching staff. That's just because that's the point that we need right now, but it will focus on those other areas. But the more that we learn about the importance of middle leadership within our schools, and the more that we've realised that actually we've left that to schools to identify their middle leaders, to put professional development plans, to source offerings to develop them, and left that at the school level, that's been a gap as our system. So for me, the know better, do better is now we've identified that, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'd agree there. One thing that actually, if there was an aha for me, it was when we got to the point around challenging rural disadvantage in all its forms, because if we layer that into schools, and you've worked in schools such as a principal at Toolangatta and at Myrtleford, I've been up on the border in Wangaratta, the challenge that comes with being not in a capital city or the larger regional setting to get professional learning face-to-face is always a challenge in those spaces. And I love the notion of the covenant layering into the framework, because that's what this framework does. It challenges the situation of where we are. We often say that it shouldn't matter for students what their postcode is. They should get the exact same opportunities as the students in larger regional cities or Metro Melbourne. The same goes for our staff. They still need those opportunities. And I think the covenant really opens that up so we can layer the professional learning, whether that's online, whether that's based out of Wodonga, whether it's based within the schools. And I think Tim and the team are also looking at that too in learning and teaching as well.
And credit to the Victorian government, where credit's due. The move from Bastow or Bastow, depending where you grew up, institute, which all of their PL around leadership was Melbourne-based, and you had to travel to Melbourne to do it, to the setting up of the Victorian Academies of Teaching and Leadership, which which we're lucky to have 2 here in Sandhurst, in Shepparton and Bendigo, is another way of presenting those opportunities that previously you just didn't access. You didn't travel to Melbourne to do a day of PL. Now we've got those opportunities and we're forming partnerships with those 2 particular centres around their offerings and what that looks like for Catholic Education Sandhurst. The other thing too is with that regional and rural disadvantage is in this space, it actually presents an opportunity because of the size or the relative size of a majority of our schools. People do tend to get leadership opportunities earlier than they might get if they were in Metro Melbourne in a larger school. And I certainly know for myself that was the case. It's those opportunities for what we might classify as a POL 1 opportunity. We've got teachers and staff in our schools who are getting those opportunities in their second year out from university. They might take on a POL 1. We've got curriculum leaders who are still in some ways forming themselves in their understanding of teaching and learning, taking on those leadership roles. So with that benefit of getting an opportunity earlier than you might otherwise is also the challenge of how do you develop your own skills in an area you are now being asked to lead.
Ash, you're really raising a really good point here, and we're getting back to this space around impact. What's the impact we hope from our framework and our professional learning offerings? There's a number of things we've already been doing that it's been a very strong focus for us, such as at the start of this year, we did professional learning for every new teacher in our diocese. And that's part of that leadership story as well, because to understand who we are, you need to fully be engaged in what is Magnify, how do we roll that out in our schools, but it's a part of the new story of how we're networking. So there's the networking opportunities that come with leadership. You've touched on again just there around some of the meetings and the things we've put in place for people who are new to leadership. As we think about those gaps, is there any gaps that you're really focused on that you hope that the leadership framework addresses so that we have this pathway building as we move forward?
The gap that I see at the moment is, can every person in our school see where the pathway applies to them? Our current model, which we're moving away from, as we've said a couple of times already, is what the principal role is. Now, we need fantastic principals who are well-rounded in those areas. Please don't hear me discount that.
Yep.
But we need people who can see their pathway as a third year out of university employee in our school and has aspirations. It might be that they are a graduate teacher. And so do they see their next logical pathway and what are the programs or training or opportunities or networks they can engage in? It might be someone who has come into a role in a finance role within a school or within the system and has aspirations to be a business manager of one of our large secondaries. What are their pathways around what training and opportunities and formation they might need to those roles? I would love to see the day when our learning support officers can see what it looks like from being an entry-level to LSO within our school to see their pathways if they have aspirations around leading people and leading units within their school. And my big goal, I suppose, is one day to be getting those learning support officers who we know are going to be great teachers. Are we giving them pathways to undertake undergraduate study? Because if we can keep those people within our schools and within our diocese, then we've done a great job.
Yeah, and I think too, if you just reflect on what you've said there, we're looking at our aspiring, our middle leaders here. And as a principal, I can remember very clearly a conversation I had with you about 3 years ago where I had a number of staff we nominated to go do a leadership program and only one could come in. And I really struggled to say, well, which one should it be out of that group? Because they needed to all be in this opportunity. And then since we've come together in this role, we actually have had a further conversation where we said, well, it's not just there. We were so oversubscribed for this middle leadership opportunity. And it becomes a bit of not an aha moment all over again, but a frustration because you and I are looking at how do we change this so that everyone who wants the opportunity can build their skills and lead. There's some exciting things in your mind that we'd really get the opportunity to work with this year, because I know already Kim and I are talking about the aspiring faith leaders. How do we create opportunities in this space for Catholic identity leaders to continue to be that next generation? What are you looking at in your space?
One of the things we currently have in place for the first time ever is a series of online meetings with our new principals and our new deputy principals. So we've called it induction, but effectively what it is, it's an introduction to the executive leadership team members through a series of 1 hour after school VCs across term one. It gives an opportunity for those new leaders to not only put a face to the name, but also for those executive members to do the same. And also gives the ELT member a chance to say, and this is the work of my team. Because when you come in as a new leader, the important thing is not only do you know who to contact, when to contact, but sometimes you don't even know where to start. So if I've got a problem that comes up in a school or a question I've got, I know I can go to my school improvement leader, and we're trying to make sure our school improvement leaders and their roles are very clearly known by not only the principals but our deputy principals. But if I'm also told, well, you need to contact operations, if I have no context of who that is or what their work is, then it's really hard. One of our strengths as Sandhurst, and one of the things that I think of in terms of our guiding light of being authentically Sandhurst Catholic education, is our relationships and our connections. So people through this will know, okay, Ben Higgins leads our operations team, and this is the work that sits under operations. It's just trying to, I suppose, put a human element to what sometimes can just be, okay, contact this person about this problem. So that has been well received so far. Was well kicked off, I think, by yourself and Paul Rowan in the first session. But that's something that I'm glad that we've not only started, but it seems to have been very well received by those participants.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think there's also the feedback we get. Each time we're doing these, we're getting the feedback to know what to build for the next opportunities. And these are going to be cyclical. This is exactly what we're going to be doing as the years progress through as well. You touched on something there that I'd like to just explore a different component. If we put our principal hats back on, I can see the leadership framework being an opportunity for a principal in the busyness of the day. It's so hard in schools to run professional learning yourself. I've done it for a number of years, running a professional learning program, but it's a lot of work. And in the days and the busyness, the way schools are evolving, it gets harder and harder to actually do the professional learning. It's different when it's mentoring and coaching, which is very much an expectation and something we look to build with our senior executive leaders. But when we think about having the framework and those conversations you're having with an emerging leader, a middle leader in your school, what's the opportunity for the principal there?
There's the opportunity for the principal, and then there's the opportunity for the employee. So the opportunity for the principal is to not only identify individuals within their school, but also to seek those broader opportunities that are on offer to expand the scope that someone might get. So rather than something that I think, I've got Darta in my school, it would be great that he's formed in this particular area, and then I need to try and source the best quality professional learning, whether it's a seminar or a online workshop or a person to come in. It removes me needing to do that, multiplied by however many staff I've got at my school. The other side of it is for the employee. So if we think in terms of recruiting and we want to ensure that we not only recruit the best people, but we also keep our best people within Sandhurst, it's around there are opportunities that come up that are not just dependent on the current school that I'm in. So if I was a teacher at Galen in the time that you were principal at Galen, it might be that I only can access that professional learning because my principal, being Darta at the time, accessed that particular professional learning. But then I go down the road and the next principal engages with a different provider. The consistency of being able to say that every person who participated in this particular formation or step or whatever it might be has got access to the same quality of professional learning means that we can get those transferable skills across settings rather than something that might only be particular to the context that I'm in right now.
Yeah, and what I hear you say here is consistency creates clarity. So the opportunity for the principal or a deputy to have a conversation with an emerging leader saying, over the next period of time, here's some opportunities. Let's explore. And I want to touch on a second just around the role of the SIL in this space, but here's the opportunity there for the principal and the deputy to say, well, over this period of time, here's what can happen. And the beauty too, I think, is that for those people who take breaks out of of leadership due to family situations or other reasons, or heading off around Australia for a year and coming back, there's the opportunity to say, no, I can still engage back in the pathway. It's not lost to me. They'll have a real chance to continue to grow at the moments and times when I'm ready to grow into that leadership space. And I just touched on the SIL. What do you think the role of the SIL will be? Our school improvement leaders, such as Kendall from our last podcast, what's their opportunities in this space with the schools?
So the role of the SIL within this is to work with each of the schools and school leaders around who are their next leaders, who are their emerging leaders, and making sure that those people are very clear around what their path is. And also identifying where potentially they are missing some potential leaders coming through the schools. So it's knowing not only on paper who they are, but getting to know what it is that those people are going to need in order to get to the next stage of their leadership. Ultimately, we know our school improvement leaders are involved in the appointment of roles like deputy principals and principals. That should not be the first time that we come across a name of somebody. We should know who those people are as they are coming through. I would love it if our SILs are in our schools prompting somebody and saying, hey, this would be a great opportunity for you. Speak to your principal about whether that is your next logical step.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity for us to look at how do we continue to collaborate across central team and our schools together with supporting our emerging middle. And also this conversation is for principals as well, working with the SIL around what's my next opportunity for growth in the role that I'm in as well. Ash, can I just play something back to you just around this conversation of the SIL? If we're to go a bit deeper, what does that look like in the day-to-day? What does that look like in an interaction with one of the staff within a school?
I feel like I'm being coached. That's a great coaching question there, Darta. What you're looking for in those leaders is, firstly, where are they at in relation to their particular craft? So if we say a teacher, for argument's sake in this, what are they like at teaching? Have they developed their skills as a teacher to be the best teacher that they can be of their discipline that they're in? That's the first thing. And so what does formation need to look like around that? There's the ability to communicate. What's their written, what's their verbal communication skills like? Is that an area for development? Because we know that's a really important part of leadership. People management skills, and that's the one area that we continue to hear as people move through. So what are they like at managing small teams of people, and do they need some skills in order to lead larger teams of people? And then there is that understanding of the totality of what a school entails. So as people move through leadership roles, they become exposed from their particular area of whether it's a discipline or whether it's a particular part of the school, to the fact that leadership within a school involves lots of different moving pieces. So that is what I would say, moving from operational leadership to strategic leadership of a school. So a SIL will be looking for, and a principal really will be looking for and talking to the SIL about particular leaders who have attributes of those areas but might need some formation in other areas, because that's where we can target them around this professional learning will help you in your communication with others, for example, to make sure that our leaders are not just great leaders of one particular area.
Yeah, I think there's an encouragement here from what I'm hearing from yourself when you think about being in a school, whether you're a middle leader, you're an experienced teacher, or you're someone who sees potential in someone in your community, it's now an opportunity to say, I'm aware that there is a framework in place. I'm aware there are real pathway opportunities in learning to be a leader. So let's take that chance, because I know in my own space, it was the words of a principal at the time that said, you want to think about this. And I wasn't even thinking about leadership at all at that stage. And it was the starting point to do something. And then the encouragement from those around you starts to lift. And that's where you get the chance to say, okay, people believe in me. I am keen. I am interested. Let's start the journey by seeing what's on offer.
Really interesting, and I was exactly the same. But if you speak to most leaders, it is because at some stage someone has seen something in you that perhaps you either didn't see in yourself or thought the time's not right, I'm not quite ready. But it was one person who said, no, I think you can do this, or no, this would be a great opportunity for you to continue to form yourself as a leader. And sometimes that's other roles. So one of the really key things of our principals and our school improvement leaders is in some ways pushing the bird out of the nest to say, you are a great leader in this school. We want you to now go to this school, this other opportunity, because they deserve access to you as a leader, or that will help to form you in a different context.
Ash, let's just take a little step further forward here. Let's think about what it looks like in the future for us with a leadership framework with aligned professional learning. And if we layer in, as I've said, we're layering in our cultural covenant into the work right as we speak. If you think about how we succeed, ambitious expectations, what does that look like for us in the creation of opportunities in PL based on a UK trip? What did you see? What are other organisations doing, other school systems doing to create really rock-solid professional learning opportunities for leaders?
They have very clear pathways that are documented, that are known, that any person within those systems can look and in a way can reflect where they currently are and where their journey is. So in the high-performing systems that we've seen, not just in the UK, but also in Australia, it's also documented down. So it's not just left to one person to be pushing, I suppose, individuals on their pathway. It is a sequential way of recording and documenting down professional learning that's been undertaken by an individual and what that can lead to. So some of the systems that we spoke to in the UK, for example, there's a prerequisite of training that you need to have done before applying for certain roles. So we have prerequisites for roles like deputy principals and principals in terms of their religious education accreditation or undertaking of master's studies, for example. But this is actually system-led to say, here are the units that are expected for somebody to do a deputy principal role. In Sandhurst, what I can see is us doing similar things for those other key roles that every one of our schools has, so that we know that the people in those roles have had the same level of training. Whether it's a learner diversity leader, have they completed the same course, for argument's sake, to enable them to have the baseline understanding around the disability discrimination, for example, or inclusive education more broadly. So that's what I've seen work very well in those systems, and hearing from the staff, they can look at it and they know where they are, they know where they want to get to, and then they can track their own path as well as be led by somebody else.
And from a practical point of view, if you're applying for positions of leadership within your school, or you're looking for executive positions outside of the school you're in, what a great way to have a CV covered. The clarity that would come in applying for positions, knowing that I've done this leadership, this has been a part of a pathway. So I've got these ticks already lined up. And then the ability then to actually write the applications with confidence, and then going into an interview with confidence to say, well, I've ticked the professional learning side of this. This isn't guesswork. I'm not putting in an application thinking, have I done enough work? Have I actually done the work needed to apply with confidence for this position? What a great opportunity for us to actually have a chance where there's clarity and consistency, not just in the learning, but also in the practical application of that learning.
I'm making an assumption, but I think at some stage this year, I will read an application for a senior role that says Adifakare 2025 as one of their professional learnings. That for me is the evidence of impact. It's only one thing that we rolled out last year, but in the future, it's seeing those things to say, well, that's a CSL leadership program or leadership development program. And it doesn't need any other explanation in there because we know what Adifakare is now.
Yeah, we recommend for people to do in a leadership space. So those courses, whether that's at postgrad level, whether that's at master's level, that we see are aligned to the direction that we're heading with Catholic Education Sandhurst. So there's that as well that in time that we'll see coming layered through. Ash, reflecting on today, what for you matters most in leadership?
What matters most for me is that every person within our school who has aspirations beyond their current role not only knows where they currently are at and knows what their goal is, so they'll know that internally. But our role is to be able to put a clear path for them to achieve those goals, not to rely on the individual to do it themselves, not rely on the principal to identify that and put that path in place, but that the person themselves can see it and then can action or put things in place in order to either attend to a specific program or some training or some study that's going to get them to the next goal. We can't just leave that up to chance. Those leadership roles and career advancement opportunities within our system are so important that we need to make sure that that is really clear for the individual.
Yeah, well said. I agree with every bit of that. For myself, what matters in leadership from today's podcast that we've spoken about, I think a key thing here is the collaboration and the partnership we have with our schools walking forward, that this is just not the job of the principal anymore, that we're supporting the schools to make sure that there's a very strong pathway, a journey that's collaborative across the central team and the schools, so that each person who wants to lead, who wants to take that journey, can do that with clarity, can do that with consistency and opportunities that will continue to enhance their skills, and they can grow with confidence in the leadership journey that they will be taking. Ash, thank you so much for joining today. It's been a great conversation. Look forward to catching up.